I'm definitely excited for upgrades we may see in the iPad lineup this year, but there's one that I feel like I've left out and forgotten about, and we haven't talked about it enough in recent history, and that is the iPad mini 6, which sounds like it could be the biggest update the iPad mini has ever seen, by far. Let's begin. So yeah, we got some leaks and rumors from Takara over half a year ago. In fact, I think the last time we ended up reporting on this report was, I think, the summer of 2020. Man, things were falling apart, but just a whole lot less than they are now. And back then there were reports that the iPad mini 6 was going to have somewhere between an 8 or 8.5 inch mini LED display, and that it would be rocking Lightning and of course the thinner bezel treatment. And then we haven't heard much since then, and they did report that it would be coming around the spring of 2021, and the fact that we haven't heard much lately is making me wonder if the report was just complete bogus, or if there's an iPad mini coming, it's just going to be later in the year and probably not in the spring. The other thing that's worth mentioning is probably how dated those old reports are now that the iPad Air 4 has officially launched, and it did not have Face ID, it had Touch ID, even though back in the earlier days of 2020 we thought it was going to have Face ID because Apple had never really developed a Touch ID in the power button method before, which a lot of people seem to be comfortable with. Personally, I would rather take Face ID, but I'm guessing that for the price to stay lower and maybe for manufacturing reasons, they want to keep that differentiating factor between the Pro iPads and the more affordable iPads. But when the Air 4 came out, I just couldn't get too excited for it because of how they priced it and the fact that it's still 64 gigs and starting at $600 was just a little too high for me. But I think there's some huge potential here for the iPad mini 6 to be a very compelling offer and probably something a lot of you would end up considering if you think about the fact that iPad mini, ever since it came out, has never changed its display size or its footprint. Okay, it's always had the same size bezels, it's always had that physical home button, and the resolution has gotten better over time, but for the most part it's still been that 7.9 inch display, and mostly internal upgrades. Occasionally it would get a little bit thinner, but barely anyone notices or cares about that. With the iPad mini 6 though, we might finally get a reduced footprint with a larger display size, and that would mean that perhaps if you're getting closer to that 8.5 inch screen, or usually when we read these reports they're a little bit conservative, so it might end up being closer to 8.6 or 8.7 inches, you're really nearing the size of the original iPad, which was 9.7 inches, except this thing, most likely now, I'm not saying this is news, I'm not saying this is a rumor or anything, but given the iPad Air 4 went with Touch ID, I'm guessing the iPad mini 6 is also going to go with Touch ID. We could be looking at a $499 iPad with a close to original iPad size display, but with just such thinner bezels that it's way easier to use in one hand, it's way more manageable. You can probably even fit it in some of your giant cargo shorts type pockets. I know it sounds crazy, but I had a lot of friends in high school that could actually fit iPad minis in their pockets, and yes, I even had that one friend that was willing to fit a full-size iPad in his pockets. Meanwhile, girls can't fit, you know, a regular-sized iPhone 12 in their pockets. Boys are like, I'm gonna stuff the 27-inch iMac in my pocket. This all comes down to pants manufacturers, okay? This is all on you. But with the iPad mini, this can be almost a alternative iPhone for certain people. You know, there's only a few software things preventing it from being an iPhone replacement. Like, you know, iPad mini can support cellular if you want to go that far, but it can't be paired with an Apple Watch, which is a bit of a bummer, and I'm sure whatever camera they put on the iPad mini 6 is probably not going to be as good as an iPhone camera. Even if they slap an A14 chip in there, I doubt the rear-facing camera is going to have portrait mode, even though it totally could. You know, they could pull an iPhone SE or iPhone XR and add some bokeh software features with that higher end chip, but they won't do that because it's an iPad and people know they don't use the camera very much. But I think deep down what I really want, and what Apple's probably not going to make, is just an iPad Pro mini. I love the idea of taking all of those features that we have on our iPad Pros and just shrinking them down into a really compact, really efficient, and more affordable iPad. We're not getting that, as awesome as it would be, but iPad mini 6 sounds like it could be close to that, or near near that. And I've been a huge fan of using the iPhone 12 mini, although not that many people online agree with me because apparently Apple is seeing disappointing 12 mini sales. So who knows, maybe because of the 12 mini, Apple's just gonna scrap updating the iPad mini this year because they're like, well, people don't seem to like it when we go smaller unless it's a HomePod or a Mac mini and that kind of thing. But even if the sales of it are not tremendous, I want Apple to consider this option, because when I reviewed the iPad mini 5 way back in March of 2019 when they last refreshed it, I loved using that thing and I almost regretted returning it because it felt like a brand new product category. Even though I had an iPad before and I had iPad OS, just having something that small that can also do split screen, but you can comfortably type with just your thumbs on it, sort of like a phone. And it's more portable than you'd expect. Normally when we think iPads, we're imagining these 10-inch displays, but with something so small like that, I think that it opens up whole new possibilities with how you can transport it and how easy it is to throw in a bag or throw in a purse or throw in a giant pair of cargo shorts. The one downside from that Mac-Takara report we got last year was that they did say iPad mini 6 would still have the Lightning port. And I know a lot of us are expecting it to have the squared off edge design similar to the iPad Air 4 and now the iPhone 12s, but the truth is the Apple Pencil takes up so much space on the side of an iPad mini that it would be kind of uncomfortable to hold and use if they did go with Apple Pencil 2 connectivity. So because of that, they're more than likely going to try to stick around with Apple Pencil 1 compatibility on the iPad mini, which I'm not excited for. And I guess the Apple Pencil's still going to be around because there's no rumors of the budget iPad ditching Lightning anytime soon. So it's a stupid charging method. I don't want them to keep it around, but it sounds like they are. But if they are keeping Lightning and they're not adopting the Apple Pencil 2 smart connector support, I feel like there's a decent chance that they're going to keep the rounded off back, which some people may like. You know, the traditional iPad mini chassis is like that. Some people would say it fits more comfortably in the hand, but most likely if it's adopting mini LED, it would still have a flat front, and I think that could just be a super modern, super up-to-date device. And if they started around $499 and it still has the A14 chip and all that, that iPad I will definitely be picking up as soon as it's available. And even if it's just Touch ID and I don't get Face ID with it, that's still something I'm willing to try out and see if I can fit it into my day-to-day life, because I love the portability aspect, and I'm hoping soon that we can get some reports or rumors about it and when it's shipping. At this point, because we haven't heard about it recently, I'm not expecting it at Apple's March event, but maybe at Quadruple U DC, or maybe in an iPhone or October event later this year. The more I think about it, the more excited I get for it. So by far, that's the iPad I'm most excited for this year. Just bringing mini LED to a design I'm already using. Kind of hard to get excited for that. And while I am excited for software changes to the iPad we could get this year, when it comes to hardware, iPad mini 6, that's at the top of my list of iPad changes I hope we can see in 2021, because it's now been almost 2 years since Apple did anything with the iPad mini. And the last time they refreshed it, they refreshed the iPad Air 3 at the same time, and now the Air 3 is gone, replaced with the Air 4, so the mini is just kind of sitting there awkwardly at $399. Hopefully it can get some love that it deserves this year. Anyways, what would you guys like to see in an iPad mini 6? I'm very curious, and would you pick one up if it was $499, had the bezel-less updated design and Touch ID power button and all that? Feel free to let me know. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.